You're listening to episode 115, Megan's Story, a son with Williams syndrome. Hello, my friends. I am so pleased to introduce to you today Megan Lenahan, who is the mother of 3 wonderful children. Her first was born with a rare genetic condition called Williams syndrome, which they did not discover until he was 5 months old. And you will hear in her story how those first 5 months felt like 5 years. So she is also a social worker. And so she has developed a whole program that we'll talk about at the end of the interview called Tulip Families, in which she kind of helps them navigate other families who have gone through similar situations to her and are just looking for extra support. So let's get right to the interview. This is Megan. Before we jump into the episode, I wanted to let you guys know that if you are a parent, a child life specialist, or professional working with children, you're going to want the hospital or physician's office or urgent care that you take your kids to have the Child Life On-Call app. It is an evidence-based tool designed to empower children and families during medical experiences. And 100% of the child life specialists who have used this app believe that it can help with expanding child life's reach beyond the bedside. And 100% of child life specialists believe it helps parents feel more empowered in their child's care. Learn how to get the Child Life On-Call app for your facility or doctor's office by going to childlifeoncall.com/partners. So why don't you introduce yourself and your family to all of our listeners so they can get to know a bit about you?
Sure. Okay. My name is Megan Lenahan, and I'm a social worker. And my husband, Mark, and I live in Nashville, Tennessee, with our 3 kiddos. And I have my oldest is 6, and his name is William. And he has a genetic condition called Williams syndrome, which the name is totally coincidence.
Oh my gosh.
This is very cute.
Yeah.
So funny, I said he's 6. He's not 6 yet. He'll be 6 this summer. But in my head, we're getting ready for kindergarten and all that, so I keep thinking he's growing up so fast. So I'll get a little more into that and what Williams syndrome is. But then I have 2 daughters also that are coming up on 4 and a 15-month-old. So our life is busy and different. It's been interesting now with the 2 young girls, as we've spent so much of our energy when focusing on Will, and our life sort of gets busier with more children, and how that has changed our view and everything too.
Oh, absolutely. And just as you add more people to the family, things get crazy. And then when you already kind of have a lot of things that you're juggling, I imagine it can get a little nuts.
It does. Yeah. But, so Williams syndrome, which is sort of how I found you and Child Life, and is a genetic condition that is a spontaneous deletion on the 7th chromosome. And that spontaneous meaning is sort of just a fluke thing. We don't really know why it happens right at conception. But we didn't find out he had that until he was about 5 months, which 5 months seemed so young, but 5 months felt like 5 years. And we were trying to kind of figure out what was going on with our first. It was our first, and we think about that now and how our perspective may have been different if we had already had other children. But we didn't know what we were doing,
Yeah. Well, yeah. Talk to us a little bit about like the pregnancy. I guess everything kind of seemed pretty typical. And then what was that challenge after he was born that you're kind of alluding to? Felt like it took a really long time to get to a diagnosis.
Yes. So he, like you said, pregnancy was really uneventful. And then I was induced when I was 39 weeks because they thought I was measuring small, right? So everything seemed fine, but the OB said, we're going to induce you tonight. It seems like they did an ultrasound. It looked like he was small for being 39 weeks. They thought maybe it was that intrautero growth restriction. They call it IUGR. He wasn't getting enough nutrients, and it'd be better to get him out. And so my husband are like, okay, whatever.
You're like, I'm ready to meet him.
Yeah, exactly. And it was a really long delivery because he was not ready at all. And it looked, it was almost just sort of really like 2 days before he actually came. And then my husband and I were recently reflecting, they brought him down to the NICU, and I was so exhausted. He was so exhausted that we don't even kind of remember how he ended up there. It just kind of, next thing we knew, that's where he was. And I was, still in recovery. And the rest is sort of a blur, but he spent a week there as they were thinking, he has some glucose issues. There's lots of little things that they were noticing, but no one seemed too concerned about anything then. And they discharged us after about a week there. But then simultaneously, we were preparing to move down to Nashville. So I should say he was born in Chicago. And we had already planned to move down to be closer to family. And so when we got here, he was 6 weeks old, and we had a new pediatrician who had a fresh set of eyes and I wondered what was going on. And in that period of 6 weeks, again, anyone who's a parent, you can remember it's exhausting no matter what. And we didn't have anything to compare it to, and he just truly was not sleeping on his own at night at all. And he was what maybe we thought was reflux, but he was, sorry about that, just vomiting a lot. And he seemed really uncomfortable, and just all these things that a lot of people said, maybe he's just a spitter,
Sure.
It's hard. It got a lot of that. But this pediatrician with a fresh set of eyes and had heard a heart murmur, which also previous doctors had sort of dismissed as, a lot of babies have heart murmurs, and again, we just didn't really know. So this pediatrician thankfully decided to send us to a cardiologist at Vanderbilt. And still it was, they noticed some narrowing in the pulmonary artery. But it's interesting looking back now, it was all, I didn't know how much was to be cause for concern, or was people seemed to just say, this is just things we're doing to make sure everything is okay, But as a mom, I always really felt like something seemed off, about him. I don't know if it was mom instinct, but a lot of my relatives or friends would say, no, just babies. And a lot of people kind of dismissing, I felt like, what seemed significant to me.
Right.
And I remember I've heard some people share similar sentiments on your podcast. So it's interesting to hear other people have that feeling. And anyway, to make a long story long, as I'm going on about this, so we get the cardiologist still said, okay, we'll come back in about a few weeks. We'll do another echo. Babies are really wiggly. It's hard to tell what's really going on. And then I can remember being in the pediatrician's office and William, huge vomit on the pediatrician.
Perfect timing, buddy. Thank you for performing.
Yeah. Exactly. And she said, that's what you mean. That's what I need, And it was exactly what I needed. And then eventually he wasn't smiling. That was the first milestone where I feel like I started to get people to pay a little closer attention to what I was seeing. And they referred us to a geneticist where they did a blood test for us. and then a follow-up at the cardiologist. It kind of the stars aligned, and the blood work and this cardiology appointment kind of all happened at the same time when I got the answers. And that's how he has a heart condition that's a stenosis of the supra aorta in the heart. And that is very unique to Williams syndrome.
Okay.
So the cardiologist says, I think this is what looks like. And by that time, my husband and I we're kind of wondering if things were starting to sort of piece together, I guess. And it felt like things were getting bigger at this point. And as you could kind of sense the doctor sharing, getting ready to share what he thought was challenging news for us. And it was. So anyway, I'm all over the place.
Well, that's probably, just because it's hard to piece back together, coming up and talking about it so succinctly when it happened, close to 6 years ago. And there's still a lot of processing that comes with that. So I'm curious about, was Williams syndrome on your radar? Like, had you done any Googling or or was it like, what are you talking about, Williams syndrome? What does that mean? What was that experience like for you, the actual diagnosis part?
Yeah, it was, it was, yes, I had one, it had come up once with some, like a neighbor of someone who had had a cousin who had it, and there are some facial features that are distinct with Williams syndrome. And so that had come up, and I remember it was a conversation that someone had mentioned it, and almost as if they had wished they hadn't said it, out loud situation. And I thought, what is that? And I did Google it, and I mentioned it to my husband, and it was like, stop Googling. You don't know. But in my heart, I was like, what, this seems, this could totally be it. This could be it. And so yes, I had this sort of idea that maybe that could be. So by the time that the cardiologist, I could sense something. I remember squeezing my husband's hand, thinking, "Oh my gosh, it was that." Is what it was. So yeah, I kind of even forgotten that until you mentioned it.
I've one of the first episodes of the podcast. I think it was episode 4. I'm probably incorrect. Her name is Abigail, and her son was born with spina bifida. And right before their 20-week ultrasound, for some reason, she was sitting in the waiting room or in the doctor's office with her mom. And her mom was like, "Oh, did you hear about this, child that was born with spina bifida?" And it's like, it was so random. And then they go, and it's interesting, all of the stories that I hear, and maybe where these little thoughts come in. Or Courtney's story, her daughter had hypoplastic left heart syndrome, and she had coincidentally written a paper about it in high school. It's these little nuggets that are really ironic for sure. And so when he explained Williams syndrome to you, did he give you kind of the this is what we're going to do, this is the plan, here's how we handle it? Or was it what was that experience like?
Oh, right. No. And that's what I'll talk a little bit more about now as I'm shifting gears and trying to get, to use my social work skills to help families.
Oh gosh, no. This is your story from being a mama. So if you want to do that, but
Oh yeah, no. It's funny that you say that, because this is my inspiration for doing the work I do, because I felt as though as a mom, that I felt really unsupported in receiving the diagnosis. And yes, but so he was a very kind, but it was I said, so what do you know about Williams syndrome? Do you have any brochures? Do you know of an association? Do you know of anything? And I felt almost had tears in his eyes of saying no. I think there is an association that exists, but I don't know what else to tell you. And there is. So there's a wonderful association that we found on our own. But and yes, and then even our pediatrician further just also didn't know what to tell us next, what to do. And that was, I remember what felt so lonely, to us. And as I think about now being a parent of a child with a disability, that part of what makes it really hard is so often you're delivered news as if it's horrible. And there's so many challenges. I don't say that at all to dismiss, because we see so many specialists. There's a lot of scary medical things that come with it. But I almost feel as though when we receive the news, there's like an apology that comes with it. And it doesn't, I wish it wasn't that way, because I now, with hindsight, it's like, it maybe wouldn't have felt as scary if there was more of, if it's more resources or more hope of real, you're reminding us that our child is still our child. And that it's not it felt like I'm so sorry to have to tell you this, by so many people. And well, like I said, I don't want to diminish the challenge, but I don't think it could have been different. And I would love for other people to feel more supported when they receive news like that.
Yeah.
Well.
Yeah. It's an important mission. And, it always amazes me, because really it takes, and I'm not the same as you, like, I'm not diminishing the work that goes in. Obviously, a cardiologist is a highly skilled, smart individual. But when delivering news like this, we know there can be a better way to do it. And when they're in med school, I just want them to come take a child life specialist class. Yes. And we can say, look, you're learning so many things, but this is what families remember when these moments happen.
Oh yes, it's so true. And right. And to be clear, I think so often these are they are such caring providers,
right.
and I think sometimes that's why the emotion might come through because of that. But people like you, child life specialists that are more trained and have in that type of delivery is so needed, I think.
Yeah. We are sponsored by Magic Mind. I am such a coffee person. I enjoy the taste and the smell in my morning routine. But the truth is, I go beyond that 1 cup of Morning Joe, and my 2 to 3 day cup habit is expensive and not that effective in the long run. Thankfully, Magic Mind has come into my life. It's a small green shot-sized drink of all natural ingredients like adaptogens to decrease stress, nootropics to boost blood flow and cognition, and unlike regular energy drinks, Magic Mind has minimal caffeine, all of which comes from matcha. After a few days in a row of drinking Magic Mind, I notice I have less brain fog and feel more productive without an afternoon slump. You can try it and get 20% off Magic Mind by going to magicmind.co/childlife and using code CHILDLIFE. If you are looking for a way to make a child in your life smile, then you have to go to smilemakers.com and go through all of the must-have toys, stickers, and prizes for kids. You'll find everything you need to make the hospital, waiting room, or even your own living room more fun with games, crafts, and prizes for every occasion. I also have very good news for you because when you go to smilemakers.com and type in OnCall20, you will get 20% off with no minimum order required. So stock up on bundles made specifically for hospital procedures and therapeutic play, and make these already very affordable items more affordable with OnCall20. That's smilemakers.com and OnCall20 for 20% off your entire you finally got the diagnosis and you came home and you told everybody, or I don't know if you didn't tell anybody, how did you guys kind of handle the stress that comes along with being like, okay, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to move forward.
Yeah, it was really, really stressful. I think we each sort of, my husband and I, chose certain people in our families that we told first, and then they helped us share the news with our other. We both have pretty big families, and eventually we did send like a larger email at the time and share on social media with people. And it felt, it was kind of like simultaneously feeling like we needed to hit the ground running and get everything all set with what did he need to do for early intervention. And then all of a sudden we had this huge list of specialists that we now needed to see because of all the different ways that his body impacted that we probably couldn't see, visibly or nobody knew yet. And so we were managing that, and we had both sets of parents who have professional background in different areas, that were wanting to make sure that they were supporting us. And it was a lot. And I think as a social worker and mental health background, I like right away told my husband, like, we need to go see a marriage and family therapist like now together.
Wow.
And I think that was hugely helpful for us. And it really didn't take long. I mean, we went through a couple sessions together, but I think that it helped us share a little with a neutral party about how we were each processing the information.
Oh, the foundation
separately.
And those tools, it sounds like, kind of set you up for a positive trajectory.
Yeah, I think so, as best as we could. And
Sure.
I know that it needed to kind of air some things. Like I had mentioned earlier, that it was so, I was feeling angry at people who had told me that everything was fine.
Yeah.
And it was helpful to say that with my husband there, and then he had other things I'm sure that he felt and that we kind of got those out of the way, to be able to game plan together. And so that was so helpful. And we just learned together, I think, just like any family, as you kind of you get used to being your own, away from your families of origin, and you're creating your own family. And especially when you're with a child that has complex medical needs or disability, it's like, I realized that it was all about what was going to be best for Will, at that time, and for our family, and that so many people now had even more opinions about how to help and what to do, and from our extended family. And we learned pretty quick on how we were going to need to create boundaries and trust ourselves and not others who weren't living it, like we were. So that was a hard time.
That takes a long time, and probably like a constant, battle of like boundary setting and trusting yourself and finding your care team that you trust and to bounce things off with.
Yes.
You had mentioned, the stenosis within his heart. What are some of the other things that you've seen in Will's case with Williams syndrome, and what has it been like 0 to 5, what your life has been like living with Williams syndrome?
Yeah. So the list of specialists that we have seen, and most we still do, we see cardiology, and we see endocrinology he has hypothyroidism that we manage with medication, doing pretty well. We see nephrology, who monitors he has high blood pressure, that's also managed with medication. GI, he has they just kind of say unknown GI issues, which has been true for William. And thankfully we have a great specialist who helps us to sort of track and monitor his symptoms, and which is challenging, especially now he's much better at communicating, but that was challenging for a while. We did neurology for a little while, he has vision issues, audiology, things that can change suddenly in Williams syndrome, which is why they need to be monitored regularly for him. So we really, right now we've been, again, pretty fortunate that things have been able to be managed, and he hasn't had any surgeries yet, sort of. So and now we kind of live in this world where we were hyper anxious about the possibility of all sorts of things when he was a baby, in that first year. And then thankfully things are all managed. But now we sort of live in this time, like with each transition, as he starts to get older, there's lots of research that shows the possibility of the heart changing or needing surgery in other areas. And there's a very higher risk for anesthesia with individuals with Williams syndrome because this very unique heart that they have yet to figure out why some people have a really severe reaction to anesthesia and others don't that have Williams syndrome, and they don't know what causes it. Mm. And so any time that they have to be sedated is really serious and requires cardiac anesthesia. And so there's lots of things that they haven't also been checked because they're avoiding sedation. So that's to say, is we spend a lot of time sort of, things seem status quo and fine, and then but we always wait for the next thing with him. So,
right.
Yeah.
That's a lot to kind of keep track of and just always have in the back of your mind, like a big, it's a lot to wear on your shoulders. So how do you take care of yourself day to day?
Well, just like a lot of parents, trying to balance it all. And I do like to run. I love to exercise. So I try to make time for that. And my other children are a gift and focusing my energy in other ways. It's been helpful to spread my parenting, I guess.
Yeah.
It sounds silly, but they're kind of.
Oh, not at all. Because it's like every child will bring you a new challenge. It just is, all the challenges may look different.
Yeah, right, exactly. So that's not exactly self-care, but that's a way to spread my focus. So and realizing I really remember struggling with when he was a baby, being able to leave him. I was so anxious about what if something happened, what if he did have a heart attack, all the stuff that people say, you got to take care of yourself, you got to leave. But I know it's not super likely, but it's more likely than the average child,
right.
that something could happen here. And it was really hard for me to get past that. And I had a lot of help working through that anxiety to slowly leave him short periods of time with trusted people. And that was probably the best thing I ever did, because I need that. I've realized I have got to take care of myself if I'm going to be the best mom that I can be. I got to take care of myself first, or I'm not helping anybody, so.
You're right. It does take a long time to learn. And it's, sometimes when people give that advice, like get out, take care of yourself. Well, sometimes leaving and being away feels worse.
Yes. Right.
And like, I think there's a time in life where like being actually happy on the floor with your baby in your living room where everybody is safe and you have what you need feels good. And that's a part of it too. Like leaving is great. And when you feel they're in a trusted position and you're emotionally ready to leave, that's great. But being with your baby too, and feeling, calm because you're together is also good.
Yes, right, exactly. And I even remember having my therapist, who helped me a lot, was like, let's try baby steps. Like, what if somebody can hold him in the living room while you are by yourself for 1 hour in your room watching TV, or just ways to just slowly seducing, so that because I had the exact same experience that you're saying. It didn't feel good to leave. I wasn't relaxing. So
Right. How could you get
do
there?
that? So yeah, I think that's a huge thing to work through for parents. To find that support is great.
So tell us a little bit about Will today. What kind of kid is he? What are some of the things he's taught you throughout this journey?
Yeah. Oh, he's so funny. He's a challenge. He's a pain in the butt, like a lot of 5-year-olds. And
I have one.
yeah, exactly. But he's great. And now, so we're transitioning. We've been in this really safe, inclusive preschool where he's been for 4 years. And he has really excelled. And so now we're preparing him to go into our zoned public kindergarten. And so new kinds of challenges arising, but he's made such great strides with it. Language is a really strong place for him. He loves music so much, and that's often a characteristic of Williams syndrome, is a strong affinity for music.
Oh, wow.
And so we haven't yet to see any specific talent or anything, but he can memorize songs. You can tell he really just feels music in a unique way.
Cool.
And he loves people a lot, to the point where often feels an extra amount than a lot of typically developing kids. Or he'll cry at just a neighbor leaving that he's been playing with all afternoon, which is very sweet and heartbreaking also, and how to sort of navigate helping a child like that learn boundaries, and honoring how he's feeling. So we're kind of dealing with those new challenges with him, but he loves his sisters and hates them the same. That's like a lot of typically developing kids, and it's kind of fun to watch those relationships change. So yeah, he's a stubborn kid, and it's fun to watch him in a unique way that has taught us a lot to really appreciate, like, every little milestone that he accomplishes is special to us, and it's still that way. And watching our girls who are developing, typically we think, whoa, look how quickly they just picked that up,
Yeah. Oh gosh. Yeah.
Oh, it's great. It really is great perspective there.
Absolutely. So talk to us a little bit about, recently in the past, I guess, year or two, you've really developed this program to meet the needs of families who had a similar situation that you did. Tell us a bit about what you've created and what you do, and how people can get in touch with you or follow along with you.
Sure. Yeah. So, like I said, I realized that there is a space for me to use my personal experience with my professional skills as a social worker. And I've longed for finding a provider who can help centralize our care for William. And when raising a child with a disability, when you're encountering complex medical needs, with navigating the education system, with finances and government resources, and your own little family unit, and mental health and all of that comes with it. And while we have lots of different areas where people can support us, it's great. We mentioned the great providers and teachers. There's just not enough time in everybody's day to connect us to the next resource that we need, or understand planning for the future, or taking time to kind of walk you through how to just navigate this world of disability or neurodiversity, or depending on what type of diagnosis your child has. So I'm hoping here in Nashville to be that type of provider for families, that a doctor could refer a family to me after receiving a new diagnosis or preparing for a transition, so I can sort of be a guide for families to know, to be a personal representation of things can work out, and here's how I've managed it personally, as well as building this sort of professional network to connect people to the right people who can help them in the community.
What a huge gift that would be, to have somebody not only who is professionally connected, like you said, but somebody who has personally gone through it and can speak to it. It's almost like a mentor on,
Right.
on steroids, like somebody who could be there and lead you and guide you and help you navigate. And how can people find out more, or find out if they could work with you? Where can they get connected?
Yeah, thanks, Katie. I hope so. So it's called, I've called it Tulip, like the flower. And I got the name from Emily Pearl Kingsley's poem called Welcome to Holland, which some people might know, is a beautiful poem that describes the experience of receiving a diagnosis for your child, and how when you're preparing to have a baby, it's like you're planning for a trip to Italy. And then when you land, you actually land in Holland. And it's not that Holland is a terrible place, but it's just that it's different. And there are beautiful things there, like tulips. And that's where I got the name from. So if you're wondering where that comes from, so you could find me, the website is Tulip Families, and I'm on Instagram at Tulip Families, and send me a DM or contact me through the website, an email. I also have a real, I think part of this mission is helping providers also to connect with each other, and know how a speech therapist can support their clients better when they know more of what's going on in the community, and who's doing ABA therapy well, or what psychologist is really going to be a champion for families with evaluations. And I want to connect professionals to each other as well. That's something that I'm working on. So I'd love to work with any and everyone who wants to serve their patients and families beyond just their session or classroom time as well.
I love that. Well, thank you so much. Do you have any other stories or things that you wanted to mention about yourself or Will or your family that you didn't get a chance to?
I don't think so. I think that's great. Thank you, Katie. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Well, I'm so grateful that you came on here, and tulipfamilies.com. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you for listening to the Child Life On Call podcast. I'm your host, Katie Taylor, and you can follow us at Child Life On Call on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Please rate and review to make it easier for other families to find us. We have cute merch available at www.bonfire.com/store/childlifeoncall, and you can listen to more episodes and find resources at childlifepodcast.com.